All right, and we're here. Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome
Hello.
to the virtual office with Nirav Desai, Kirby, and myself, Sarah.
Yes, welcome back, VR AR Association
virtual
Seattle.
Office with Nirav Desai, Kirby, and myself, Sarah. Are you okay? Do we have everything?
Oh, was that me?
I don't know.
Got a little bit of feedback there.
Okay. I think we got feedback. Technology.
Yeah, so that's actually really timely for tonight's webinar about the virtual office and some of the challenges of using this equipment that we have currently today. And talking about that, if you are interested in finding out more about the Seattle VR AR Association, we'd love to have you reach out to either of us, Sarah or myself. The next screen, you'll see our contact info. So you can email us directly. You can also find us on Twitter, tweet to us. We're on LinkedIn, easily find us there. Part of the mission there of the VR AR Association is to allow members to communicate projects that they're working on, to learn from each other. And at times we also have guest speakers, and that's what we're doing tonight. We're going to have a guest speaker with us talking about collaboration, virtual office. Yeah,
and we really try to provide a service to our XR community here in Seattle, allowing people the opportunity to speak in front of their audiences based on whatever topics they want to present on, and we'll give you a shot to tell us what you might like to do in the future after near. Couple of girls, don't be mean. Everybody hates an internet bully. But we're all here to learn and have a good time. And so just please check out our code of conduct if you have any questions there.
Yeah, and our motto, the association model, this global organization, grow, learn, and connect. So hopefully tonight we're going to hit all three of those. As we do this speech, just before we introduce our speaker, you will be able to place comments, your questions into the comment stream on YouTube. You can also ask questions at our Twitter channel, which is at Seattle_VRARA.
So the VR/AR Association is really the global entity for VR/AR. So this is really, it's an opportunity to connect with people everywhere. You can get it on projects. You can, like we said, speak on a global level. So you can really get yourself out there, which is pretty awesome. It's a pretty great opportunity.
So these are some of the benefits by joining the association. You have access to a lot of worldwide membership, well over 4,000 people. Most major cities around the world do have a local chapter. Now, of course, since COVID, that doesn't quite matter as much since we're all global. There are industry members that are participating, different committees that you can join. So for example, I'm with the WebXR committee. If that's something you're interested in, I'd love to hear from you later. And we have access to a huge Slack, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. You can see over on the bottom left, the community numbers.
Yes, and an exciting new piece of news. We have access to lots of equipment rentals and just recently added the HoloLens 2 to that lineup of devices you can rent, which is pretty great if you're looking to not spend a few grand on one piece.
Yeah, and I just noticed in the chat we do have some folks saying hi. And the cool thing, like we just mentioned, even though this is Seattle, we have folks from Orlando, Joel from Virginia, Daryl from Raleigh, Harmony Transition Coaching is from Orlando. Sandy from Pittsburgh. Amazing. Thank you for joining us.
Wonderful. Welcome, everybody. And without further ado, we're going to get off here and allow Nirav to educate you on the great things about immersive collaboration.
Hey, Kirby. Hey, Sarah. Great. Thanks for introducing me. And wanted to get. We've all been in this environment for the last 6 months now. We're global, but we're all sitting in our basement or we're sitting in our home office. I don't know about you, but I get Zoom fatigue almost immediately. At Moonbeam, we're trying to figure out how to move that to a more immersive collaboration. There's a number of other companies out there that are doing this, and I'll talk a little bit about our unique approach, but also try to inform you on the broader ecosystem. But let's just dive into it. There we go. Sorry, jumping ahead a little bit. Okay, so I'm sure everyone here has experienced Zoom, Teams, whatever platform you use of choice. But the numbers are astounding. In December, Zoom had 10 million users. It's now surpassed 300 million. That was in April. Mural, from the whiteboarding perspective, just secured a $180 million Series B round. People are trying to figure out how to work more productively remotely. Interestingly, and this just got done today, the Global HR Summit had a great experiment, and I'll get into this a little bit more around looking at how to actually run a whole conference in VR. This is being talked about everywhere. Everyone's trying to figure out how to stay productive, how to do more, how to replicate what we used to be able to do. I don't think there's going to be a new normal. I mean, I don't think that we're going to ever go back to the way we were. There's going to be a new normal. That includes virtual collaboration into everything we do. Definitely Zoom, but I'm actually going to postulate that I think immersive technology can help address Zoom fatigue. Now let's get into what web meetings are good for. At Moonbeam, we've done a lot of research with our our target customers, looking at where we want to go. What we found is web meetings are really good for lectures and presentations when it's one person trying to communicate information like this to a group. They're great for document review. If we're really down, we have a document that we're looking through. We're trying to figure out how to work it to get the final product. The tools are astounding for that. And it's great for status meetings or any kind of meeting where you have a defined, a routinized set of criteria. And I'm going to really talk primarily about the enterprise world, not so much on the consumer side, but it's really great for things where work is largely independent, but when you have to meet, you meet through a defined process. And actually, in many ways, this is a lot more productive than a meeting in a conference room. There's other areas where it fails. It's really hard to start things new. Zoom fatigue sets in early. Meetings kind of run together, and the whole fatigue comes from the fact that you're sitting at your desk. You don't have a chance to get up as much, even if it's just walking down to the conference room and or grabbing a cup of coffee. You don't tend to do that. You sit in your chair, and particularly if meetings back to back to back, you're not going to go anywhere. It's extremely difficult to network because the conversation is not natural. We can't talk over each other. If you're going to a networking event or a virtual conference, the natural way of moving from conversation to conversation, someone over there might be talking something interesting. Let me go get into that conversation. It just cannot happen. Further, the technology, the way audio cuts in and out, trying to focus on who's speaking, makes it almost impossible to have that natural flowing conversation. And it obliviates serendipity. I've been getting a lot of productivity done on programs that are already established, but you don't have that serendipitous meeting. I know there's some great people on this call right now. If we were doing this in an actual event venue, I would see you. I'd be able to seeing you nodding if you're getting a point or not. And maybe I'll seek you out and talk to you a little bit more. Maybe you'll come talk to me later on. And that serendipity that maybe you amongst yourselves would talk to each other. That's really the power of these events. That's harder to do in a web environment. Enter immersive technology. Now, immersive technology offers the ability to address some of this. And now I'm including both augmented, virtual, and mixed in this. And each one would have a slightly different approach. For example, in a VR environment, you're really blind to what is what everyone's in the same world. And I'll get to a video on this if you haven't been in a VR social environment, but you're brought into that environment, and everyone's brought to a shared environment. And so you can interact with what's in the room, but a very simple task of, hey, that was a good comment. I want to take a note on it. You have to take your headset off and get out a sheet of paper to do that. It's really not conducive to that right now. In an AR collaboration environment, if you're at the phone-based AR, you're kind of limited to what you're showing. And you may have access to more on your desktop, but no one else does. So that's not really a shared resource. So it becomes really hard. How can we address that and make up for some of the failings of web meetings and bring that into virtual collaboration? So that's what we're trying to do. Now, I bring this up. A bold experiment just took place in the Global HR Summit, just finished up in, I will say it's in Vancouver, but that doesn't really matter. It took place in AltSpace VR. This was my presentation that I made there earlier in the week. And that was my avatar. And all of the other speakers on the panel were also avatars. And it was a really interesting experiment. The content was great. We had some amazing HR leaders from around the world. What I took away as a technologist, though, is it really captured engagement. I've been to a variety of Zoom-based events since the lockdown. What this really did well, I would say the best experience I had was the networking sessions, the breakout sessions. I was actually many times I'm sitting there talking to one group. The interesting comment made a few steps away, and I was able to jump over that, contribute to that conversation, or listen a little bit more, and then come back to my conversation the way you would at an actual physical conference. It was really amazing. And what allows that is spatial audio, spatial awareness. My sound, the further I got from someone, got quieter and quieter. And that simple feature that's added in a virtual environment means that I can listen to two conversations at once. The sound isn't going to cut out. And the other great thing is, as you can tell, I talk with my hands. That is visible in VR. You can get a sense. I could point. I can emphasize statements, and likewise, I can see that from you. If you haven't moved in a while, maybe I'm not as the conversation is that interesting. The ability to gauge a sense of emotional response from body language, from emojis, what have you, really allows a closer to in-room experience. Again, the challenge though is how do you make productive work out of it? So I'll just summarize a few challenges to web collaboration. One is distraction. If I have when I'm looking at a conference, I have easy access to my email, to my other documents. It's very easy for me to get distracted by an urgent email that comes in, or immediate need to maybe fall down, an alert from a news provider or what have you. It's easy to get distracted on Zoom or Teams or WebEx or whatever platform you choose. there's a lack of cues for understanding that the content is abstracted away from the presenter, right? So we could be working on a document on a side screen here, and you would be able to see that, or you see me. But if there's a group of 5 people on it, who are you looking at? Are my eyes looking where they should be looking at the same thing you're looking at? You don't get those clues. In VR, you can actually get a sense if people are looking at the same place as you are, which really aids communication. Positioning gestures all add to that. Again, this lack of spatial audio and the single speaker makes it hard to talk over each other. And I'm not a huge advocate of talking over other people in meetings, but when you're really jiving and you're building off each other, that actually helps communication. Where you're whiteboarding together and you're really finishing each other's sentences. That could be a good thing. All of that are areas where Zoom just really doesn't address it. But again, it's not for everything. I've found that immersive virtual offices are really good for certain scenarios, and I'll go through a few of them here. Brainstorming. If I am whiteboarding with a colleague, I really want to see what they're looking at when I'm drawing, and I want to see what I want them to see where I'm looking when they're drawing. I want to be able to jump up and contribute to their visualizations of the data. It's about getting thoughts out of your head and into a format that we can both interact with. Design thinking exercises. There are a number of tools out there that are playing around with it in 2D. Mural, as I mentioned earlier, with one of them. That's really hard to do because it's about being in that room together and riffing off each other. It's designed to get you away from your desktop and into physical space and working that way. And that's, again, hard to do in a 2D medium. Knowledge capture is another one. And this is if I'm interviewing an SME, a subject matter expert, I want to be able to capture what I want to draw what they're saying. I want them to react to how I interpret what they're saying and give me feedback, right? And that back and forth really adds to that understanding and validation of that understanding. Again, if we had a whiteboard, if we had a gestures and ways to conceptualize that, whether that's collaboratively working on a PowerPoint together, whether it's working on a Visio diagram, or whether it's just whiteboarding. That, again, is hard to do. I'm also looking at mentorship and pitches. Mentorship is a great one because you can have a conversation with a mentor. You could do it over the phone. You could do it over a Zoom session. But it's really about that personal one-on-one connection. I want to be able to look at you eye to eye. I want to get a sense of what you're thinking, and that engagement, that body language is critical. Negotiation planning, similar. The question is, how do we make this productive? How do we actually take notes? How do we integrate that in a medium that it persists beyond the virtual session? And that is actually what Moonbeam is trying to address. So a little small sales pitch. I won't dwell too much on this, but Moonbeam Engage is really looking at how we build intuitive, immersive, and pervasive experiences to make other collaboration platforms better. How do we use AI to aid collaboration and reinforce a designed and trusted process for getting knowledge out of your head into a medium that can be shared? So how are we doing this? There's about 30 different VR platforms out there, and I could go into the benefits or disadvantage of each of these. There's a lot of hardware out there. If you look at the cloud world, there's platform, there's hardware, there's infrastructure, there's software as a service. All of that is built up on top of each other. We haven't quite got that far in the XR world. A lot of these platforms have their unique way of engaging with each other, a unique way of presenting their data. what we're building on top of it is tools to really make that productive. Automated transcription, conversational AI, voice dictation, multimodal sensory inputs. How do you actually use a pen and a tablet to whiteboard together? And then most critically, the exportation of digital artifacts. When you create something in one of these meetings, it's not, and you're using it for actual work, you want to, the way we do it in a physical environment is you take a picture of that whiteboard and you transfer it to another medium. How do you do that in VR? Of course, you can take a picture, but can we make it productive for work, propagate back to our other normal desktop environments? That's what we're playing around with. Now, this is kind of, I wouldn't say the complete landscape of VR collaboration tools. There are plenty more. These are the ones that are probably most focused on enterprise and business collaboration. Altspace, while more of a social platform and event platform, is now starting to move into this, particularly with bespoke events. But this is kind of, and I'd be happy in the Q&A go into my thoughts on some of these, also on the hardware, but wanted to kind of just give you a sense of where I'm coming from. Now, I've talked around a lot of this. I come from years of experience working in enterprise training and enterprise collaboration through a large consulting firm. And these are kind of the experience I've taken away. I'd love to share with you just real quick what it looks like, at least portrayed in the 2D medium, what one of these platforms really look like. So I'll quickly go through the Moonbeam platform just because you get a sense of it. Again, the core interaction is not all that different than in a lot of other platforms. We've added a number of tools to make it a little bit easier to use and do productive work in a VR session. And I'll describe that as we go through the video a little bit. So here I am with Maria in the room. We have a transcription service that's transcribing what we're saying, automatically extracting insights. The spatial audio is there, so we can have multiple conversations and can be multiple people in the room. Here I'm taking a note to myself. This is an action item that I need to email Tom a PDF that Maria told me about. And you'll notice that it does show up, should show up. There's some lag issues on this video. But that shows up in the log, so I can take notes in the meeting. It's kind of a note to self functionality. Here, and again, we're designing this for productivity. You'll see the ability to present documents, talk about them. Of course, I have a laser pointer as we're talking through. Again, spatialized audio, content integration of all sorts of other content mediums. The video is not going that well, but here we have a whiteboarding function. Everyone can whiteboard in the room together, add comments. Again, voice notes added on top of that, so you know where the comments are made and when. And we're merging with a number of other frameworks to visualize data. So here we have a lean business model canvas. There could be a number of other ones. Defining a roadmap. Here we also have a schedule. So this is actually taking your work products, bringing them into VR, being able to talk about them, have multiple screens up at the same time, and even look at your data in 3D. All of these tools together really aid collaboration and make the working session more impactful, more valuable, and allow you to take more back to your 2D world. So, I'm envisioning a future office where we have a multitude of tools that are available for us to use. We have Asana and Trello and all the normal project management tools for collaboration. We also have our document tools, Word, etc. We have Zoom for initial, just normal structured status meetings where seeing someone's face might add a little bit. But then we have another set of tools that are new and for a different type of environment that allows us to really deeply collaborate, create, and strategize with people around the world without ever needing to leave our desk. And to do this, we need to have multimodal input. We need to have tools and notes for note taking and transcription, and connection back to all these other tools that I've talked about. Key takeaways here is, of course, we need to make sure that the environment is intuitive and natural. AI helps with that. I don't think that VR can really do well and really catch on without AI being a significant part of it. We need to bring the right tools to the job. Teleconferencing is just great for talking on the road, sharing updates. Web collaboration then is when you actually need to see a document, work together on that. It's really document focused, I would say, and that's what web collaboration is really good at. Immersive tools are really about engagement, team building, blue sky sessions, whiteboarding, where you really need to think outside the box and actually create and throw out some bad ideas, and that's all right. You're building off them. And the hybrid offices of the future are really going to incorporate all of this together. And that's kind of my 2 cents on where we're headed. And I'd love to get your thoughts. I'd love to get some questions.
Awesome.
Hey, welcome. So we do have a number of questions for you. Thank you very much, Nirav.
No
I attended that global HR summit as well, most of the 3 days, and it was really fascinating. It was a great experience. And I'm not sure, but just to reiterate for the audience, I believe there were 58 speakers, presenters, and 50 of them had never used VR before. And like the organizers said, they were brave enough to try this big experiment. And I think it turned out very, very well. Yeah. Okay. We do have some questions, and I've been making notes here. Please keep them coming in as well. So the first one, I'm just going to read it out here, is from Sirem. What should be the typical time to have the VR collaboration? The HR conference where 50 VR headsets were sent. How long a person can comfortably wear these devices?
So I think everyone reacts slightly differently. Now, I wasn't one of the organizers for the conference. I was just a speaker, so I don't want to speak to the conference. What's interesting, though, is I am working with a number of my clients on conferences they're planning. And what's interesting is when we're not doing a physical conference, you could change the format completely. There's no reason why we need to, do a 9 to 5 conference. It's hard to wear one of these headsets. I guess I was in it for about 2.5 hours without much issue. I wouldn't recommend that to everyone. I wear it a lot, and I tend to be pretty tolerant to motion sickness and fatigue. I would say about 1 hour to 2 hours is fine. I usually keep my headset plugged in when I'm in them because the battery life on it is about, depending on use, can fluctuate from 1 hour to 2. I'm talking about the Quest. But if you're coming in with a tethered system, of course, you could go longer. But eye strain is real. Neck fatigue is real. The Oculus tends to be a little bit more heavier on the front. So I think it's really on conference organizers that are experimenting with this to lengthen out the conference. We don't need a 3-day conference. We can have 2 hours a day for 2 weeks. And let's experiment with that.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, and I'll say too, just by attending that conference, it was full day, 3 days.
Yep.
Sometimes I was in the Quest, other times I went to my Valve Index because I just find it more comfortable. And then sometimes I was just on the desktop 2D experience. So that might be something that's important to call out as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that not everybody was actually in VR. And you could still participate.
Yeah,
right.
Most of the VR collaboration tools now are multi-platform. I wouldn't say all of them are, but a lot of them are. I think part of it is interoperability between these different platforms need to be worked on, so that you can have a single application run across more systems.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sarah, I think we have another question queued up.
We do. Next one is from Daryl Wise or Darrell. Did I say your name right?
Gerald, I know this guy. Hey, Gerald.
Excellent. Perfect. So have you seen any trends where teams are exploring the use of audio technologies or spatial audio or proximity-based haptics to augment the immersive collaborative experience or for collaboration? And then he actually clarifies proximity-based haptics between avatars within the virtual space, etc.
So interesting. I have not seen that, Gerald. I've seen a lot of work done around spatial audio in terms of both modifying that kind of audio dampening effect, right? So some platforms, you can hear clear across the room, and sometimes beyond the walls of the room. Others, it really can only go for 10 feet. And it kind of depends on what kind of experience you're looking for. I am not sure that's adjustable on every platform, but it should be. And then what was interesting, most of these platforms do have kind of a presenter mode or amplification mode. So like if you're a speaker, it's like having your sound piped across the whole building, right? Everyone can hear you. What's interesting about that is it allows crosstalk, sidebar conversations while the speaker's talking, like you'd get in an actual conference. I haven't seen anything with haptic response with avatars bumping into each other or they're close to each other. That'd be interesting to look into.
Absolutely.
Daryl, you always keep me on my toes.
Good to have those people around.
Yeah.
Opportunities.
All right, what do we got next, Kirby?
Yes. So we had a question about the video that you were showing, and I know we had a bit of lag there. Is there any audio that goes with that? And can we put that up for people to watch later?
Yeah, I can send you a YouTube link to that video, and it has narration on it as well. So.
Okay, great.
Perfect. Next up, we have Joel Ward. Speaking of the hybrid office, what happens if and when we go back to the office, and can we have kind of the best of both worlds with in-person and remote?
So I'm hoping we can. I think there's a lot of uncertainty there in terms of I love what spatial is doing in terms of the augmented reality virtual environment. It's a lot easier when everyone is in VR, right? Because then you have full control of the environment. But I think what will be needed for a hybrid office where 2 people are in the same room and 3 are not, for example, is a more IoT office where some of the tools that you might be using to collaborate are also tracked. And I'm thinking really in terms of design thinking sessions. But at minimum, I think people being in the same room together working on these collaboration platforms, audio canceling is something that a lot of companies have struggled with. Is how do you cancel the audio of others in the same room so you don't get the feedback loop? I think once we capture that, that's critical, because then you can have 3 people in one office, each in their headset working together, and 2 people remotely. And at least you're all in the same virtual room working together. And then when you take off the headset, clearly you're in the normal world again. But that echo effect is really a problem still, and often, and we encounter that on web conferences as well.
Yeah, daily. Okay, next up we have Harmony Transition Coaching asking about how you view the future K-12 classroom. And there's a second part to this because Joel also chimed in and asks, have you seen this used for education so far? And he assumes one of the hurdles is devices, but also participation on desktop and mobile should be possible, right?
Yeah. So interestingly, a lot of these companies, and if you notice the landscape I put out there, I didn't put many of the companies that are focused purely on classroom. Certainly, I would say all of those companies have a hybrid between enterprise and classroom. Joel, Harmony, great questions. I'm not sure your real name, but I'm just going to call you Harmony. uh, a lot of universities are particularly experimenting with this. I know here in Seattle, Bellevue College is doing a lot. I would say actually one of the biggest in the space right now, Engage, which was just recently invested in by HCC, is really focused on education as their primary market. As with Doghead Simulations, that's kind of what their focus is. It just makes sense, particularly for project-based exercises. I'm working with the University of Washington on their capstone program, and one of the things we're looking at is experimenting with remote mentorship for the capstone using immersive tech.
Awesome. Wonderful.
Yeah. Again, how do you go from the lecture, which is fine this way, to breakout sessions with students working together? Mm-hmm. And again, hardware is a problem, but at least they're looking into that.
Yeah. I've also seen some examples at the college level, even before COVID, and that was more for training, sort of to get certified before you could work in a particular lab, just so you became familiar with the equipment ahead of time. But that's, now we got to go a bit further.
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting, actually, we hosted a hackathon a few years ago with the CDC. And they sent some their experts out here, and we one of the challenges was to build a virtual lab trainer, that so they could train before they send scientists into a biohazard environment. So training is huge.
Yeah, well, and I mean I guess the bright side of lockdown and the way education has going back to school and everything else, it's made a lot more people in the mainstream aware of immersive technology and willing to give it a shot whenever it gets there. So at least we've got that going for us.
So there is one thing with that too, though. Like, we're very excited about it because we're in this space, but we also have to remember that most people in the world have never tried VR, never experienced AR, and it could be an awful long time before they do. So we need to use the existing tools we have, like web browsers and mobile phones.
Well, if you don't mind, I know Daryl asked a question kind of along those lines, around what are the what technologies are emerging. Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Gotcha.
That will allow VR to get in the mainstream. I actually think we still have a long way to go on that. I mean, my argument, and Kirby, we've talked about this before, is the Palm Pilot came out in 1997. It was 10 years later that we had the iPhone. In the interim, we had a BlackBerry, which really opened that market wide open because we were able to get email on our phones. Yay, right? Mm-hmm. I was happy with just scheduling, but now we have email, right? But it was when I think we tend to jump to the consumer market way too early. I think the enterprise really needs to adopt this. I love the enterprise training from the perspective and of working around really tough equipment. Daryl, you know about this with what you do. We need to first get enterprises to really buy hardware, buy large-scale training environments, or collaboration environments, before we can expect the casual user at home to go in and meet up with a buddy and watch a baseball game in VR. I just don't. I think it's a long way off.
Yeah. Certainly,
because you need the AI, you need tools to make it easy to use and don't separate you from your world.
Yeah. Certainly, and I think just to clarify what I was getting at, this has made people more aware of the pain points of having the rest of that world taken away from you. Yeah. So if you have something that can provide that for you, once you get to the point of rolling it out on a major enterprise scale, like once you get that adoption starting and it trickling down, this pain is not going to go away. This has disrupted life globally. So it'll be interesting to see how the adoption happens down that chain with so many people feeling this pain point now.
Right. Yeah. And just a little bit to add on there again, like focusing on the enterprise right now, there are what you might consider low technology solutions that are still augmented reality. For example, with Google Glass, even though you're not placing a 3D object in space and having it fixed there over time, just having your hands free and having a checklist or a task list go down the side that you can see is really valuable.
Yeah.
And great news today, Bose with their audio sunglasses. Now they have 3 versions of the glasses. So they've definitely, they ran that first experiment with the first audio device they came out with. People loved it. It sounded great. I was actually going to get a pair, and then they discontinued it. So I was very excited to see that they brought it back.
Yeah. Well, it looks like we have one more question here from Martin. So what is your opinion about the VR world like Facebook Horizon or XR Space? Just for fun, or is it usability for enterprise?
So right now, and I think they're targeting the wrong space. I mean, I'm sure Facebook knows a lot more than I do, but having spent a lot of time in the different products in the space, enterprise is about productivity, about sharing content with your colleagues, and about getting things out of your own head into a medium that can be shared. And you need to have the tools to make that possible. And I haven't really seen that in the commercial, the social VR type tools. XR Space I haven't used. I know of them, but I haven't used it. So
I wouldn't be surprised if Facebook just buys a company or two.
Yeah,
that sounds about right.
Kind of have that track record.
Yeah, but I think the movement in this space is going to be in enterprise tools for that conform tightly to a business process. At least that's the bet I'm making.
So I think there was one other question there. I'm not sure if you saw it.
There
Sarah?
is from Allie. And she's wanting to know, what is the most important feature or business value proposition for enterprise to add the overhead of buying all of this VR equipment instead of just using Zoom?
So so my bet is it's going against the travel budget, right? A $1,000 Oculus Go, right, or 1,100, whatever their enterprise pricing is not that much when you compare it against the cost of a flight. And not that we can fly anymore, but we used to fly with reckless abandon and
a hotel and food and
exactly, right, car rental. So the question I'm asking myself from the Moonbeam perspective is, what are those essential meetings that you can't have right now, but what the VR can allow you to have? And then the cost of the VR headset is negligible, right? Orientation for new employees. How do you impose team culture on them? How do you get them to understand? When they're working from home and they might never actually see the office that they go into? Team building events. You have a reorg now. No one knows each other. You're maybe used to be adversaries in some way, and but now you have to work together to solve the new problem. How do you build that? And without, the way we used to do this is a corporate offsite. Maybe we will get back to that again, but in the interim, how do you build trust? How do you build trust across a team over Zoom? It's very hard to do, but you can do that in VR. And then also these early stage ideation sessions. I think that can really be done in VR. It's really hard to do that in a 2D medium right now.
Absolutely.
So I don't think the cost is the big problem. I think it's finding the right use case for that that justifies the value.
Perfect.
I did put one question I think we might have missed. It's in the private chat there if you have a look.
Oh.
Sure. So let's see if I can find this in here so everybody can see it.
Yeah. And by the way, thanks very much for the questions. This has been very good.
These are fantastic questions. Yes, thank you. All right, so Joel again hitting up with another great question. Seen some platforms like Altspace with emojis for effect, and Spatial just added fist bump for high five visual cues, which include haptics if you're using Quest controllers. So more of a statement, less the question, but what do you think?
I think it's great. What's interesting is, I could tell from your face whether you're smiling or not, right? Think about this in terms of a speaker at a conference, right? It's the avatars don't tell you their emotional state. It's hard to register clapping, right? Which, speakers kind of like that feedback and, laughing or what have you, depending on the size of the speak. I don't ever get claps. But occasionally I'll get a laugh. But that's helpful. And you don't really get that when you have everyone muted and the audio turned off to make the so two things. One, spatial audio helps with that, right? So you can actually not force people to mute themselves. You can let them talk amongst themselves as long as you have the dampening far enough that it doesn't interfere with how other people are hearing you. But the visual clues are a great way for the audience to give you feedback on, hey, I like what you're saying, or I think it's pretty critical that we find ways to communicate that when we're working with avatars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's kind of neat, speaking of Altspace with the emojis, you can anticipate when it's coming because you see everybody's right hand or left hand come up, getting ready to squeeze the trigger. So it's it's kind of fun.
So Kirby, since you were at the conference, there's this movie called Congress with Robin Wright. I encourage everyone to watch this because it so well articulates kind of what that conference made me think that we're going. And frankly, the way I see this kind of to a certain degree playing out.
All right. So we have a movie recommendation.
Yes.
Awesome.
All right, Daryl, coming in with one final question. I think this might be the last one we can do before we wrap. While we've seen a rapid adoption of immersive, what markets or industries have you seen that maybe push back on these technologies due to organizational culture or other factors?
So great question, Gerald. I think I wouldn't mind breaking that down in a pre-COVID and post-COVID world. I think what's interesting is software was a slow adopter of immersive tools for productivity because so much of their work is already 2D. Whereas other areas, manufacturing, more risk-averse industries, were more interested in playing around with it, right? The fact that Paycar was one of the early users of the HoloLens, it was mind-blowing to me, right? A company that still wears suits in Bellevue when they go in. Manufactures semi-trucks, right? And they were one of the early adopters. So it was kind of turned on its head. Whereas, talking to a lot of the cloud companies, they're like, why do I need immersive communications? It's a fun thing to play around with, but I'm not going to use that for my work. Now I think the aperture is shifting a little bit because everyone's already has been forced to use Zoom. And the companies that are not so much tied to the sectors that are not so much tied to their work being in a 2D medium where there's more collaboration, consulting is a great example. They're very interested in trying these more, I would say, as they say, risky technology areas for these risk-averse companies. There's been a number of sectors for virtual collaboration from, I would say the early stage was really around architecture and product development was where they were playing around with it. Now you see it more in more general sectors, just innovation, finance, consulting, other areas that traditionally have not worked, either traveled or didn't see the need for, CAD integrated models coming into their work.
Yeah, I really like that question because, for technology adoption, looking at it from an enterprise point of view, quite often I think it does come down to the culture of that company. Yeah. And I can see there being some resistance in more traditional enterprises in the simple fact that if you enter a virtual world, the leaders may feel uncomfortable because it's really new to them, while fresh employees just coming out of college, it's like, hey, this is nothing, right? This is fun. So they may feel a little awkward. Plus, it's kind of an equalizer because everybody in the world generally has the same powers, right? You may close off the stage when you're speaking and that type of thing. But you may not realize where the power is, the ranking. And that could worry some people.
So actually, you bring up an interesting point that kind of changes Daryl's question a bit. Sorry, Daryl, I'm adapting your question. But the hierarchy in the organization, I have found that very senior executives are very happy with web collaboration. They do a lot of their work on their phone. They, deal in documents, review documents. By the time ideas get to them, they're already well vetted, and they're kind of giving their go, no go. And I haven't seen as much desire for immersive tools at that level. There's been talk a little bit about immersive boardroom meetings, etc. But I see kind of more at the don't want to say maybe middle management, maybe team or group management. That's where people are really feeling the pain, because when you're having to consult with an employee on their performance review, or you're looking at how to build a group dynamic across a team, that this 2D web collaboration just isn't doing it. So you're willing to try different things. But I don't think the senior executives that I've talked to, at least, have felt that pain in the same way.
Yeah, there's a lot to be talked about for organizational structure in the enterprise, and oftentimes it is those young employees or newer hires to the company that have great ideas, and they're trying to push it from the bottom. At the same time, the executives up top, they want change so they can generate more value. And like you say, that middle section sometimes is the tough one.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. This has been an incredible discussion, and we really appreciate you giving us your time, Nirav. This has been fantastic.
No, it's been a great conversation. I really appreciate the questions, and your conversation has been great. I've had a great time. So
great.
Wonderful. We're just gonna do a couple of little things to wrap up here. We definitely want to let everybody here know that the VR AR Global Summit is coming at the end of the month. New dates, September 30th to October 2nd. You can get your tickets now at vrarglobalsummit.com, or you can scan this fancy little QR code right here and check it out there. And Kirby and I really appreciate you joining us. This was great to have all of your engagement with the questions. Please go ahead and give us your feedback by scanning the QR code here. We'd really appreciate it. There are 4 questions, really only 2 if you don't count the ones that aren't required. So it takes about 2 seconds to do. We'd really appreciate it.
Yes, thanks very much, everyone. We hope to see you again in a month. And anybody who wants to find out more about the association, once again, just reach out to Sarah or myself. And Nirav, maybe we can put your, Sarah, do we have his Twitter or email?
We certainly do.
Which would you prefer, Nirav, as a contact?
Twitter is great.
Twitter? All right. Okay.
All right.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much, everybody, and have a great night.